168 and guys like Regis, Prograis who scared to move up and wait. Nah, I ain't watching none of that fight. I didn't know Regis was fighting. I mean, somebody told me a couple days, and then Kid Bud told me they was fighting in Chicago. I didn't even know. I possibly would have considered going to Chicago to see that card because I met Kenneth Sims, interviewed him, good guy. Um, you know, some people was alleging that they thought Oscar the Rat was on that shit. I can't speak on it, but the Rat said he felt like Ryan was on that shit when they fought. So I ain't watched none of it. Um, really, other than the Sims fight, it ain't worth my time. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Regis Progress rather die in the ring before he move up and weight. And that's one of the dangers of staying, overstaying your welcome at a weight class. Because once you start stressing to make weight, you know what I'm saying? Remember he was talking about he was going on like, 48-day fast or something like that. Once you start had to go to the or dry fast. Remember he said he was dry fasting for so I don't know the amount of time he was dry fasting for. But when you start going to the extremes to try new tricks and try new things to cut weight, to that extreme where you got to do a dry fast, it's time to move up in weight. One of the dangers of not moving up in weight, guess what? When you start stressing to cutting at the weight, what do you think starts to happen when you start doing extreme cuts? Well, I ain't gonna say extreme cuts, because that's kind of saying more about the weight. I mean, when you start like, you know, it's hard to make the weight. You start cutting out the important things in your body, too much of it. So you start to cut out water. You start to cut out certain vitamins that you need. And that water is critical. You know what I'm saying? Because your brain sits in water. So once you get to the extreme part of you so much in a calorie deficit, not only do you start burning you start taking the fluid outside of out of your brain and your cranium, you also start to burn muscle. And that becomes a problem. Once you start burning muscle at extreme rate, that you have a really big problem. So you're burning the fluid, or you're depleting the fluid. Your body is all made up of water. Muscle is made up of water. So guess what? If you're starting to drain, or you're starting to drain the fluid out of your brain, guess what you also doing? You starting to drain. Your muscle is made up of water too, so you starting to burn through muscle. So you get to the point where, you know, you burning water, you burning muscle. You burning water, you burning the most important thing in your body that your brain sitting in. So on top of that, you sparring, and most of the injuries that happen, most of the critical damage happens in the sparring match. It happens in the gym. I remember I interviewed Joel Diaz almost around, about 10 years today. 10 years. 10 years ago, I interviewed him before I even had this platform. And he talked about most of the injuries, they happen in the gym. His injury, his eye, he told me personally, his eye happened that way. His eye, the way it is to trainer, is because it was a sparring injury. So think about it. You're trying to cut all this weight, and you also have to spar because you don't stay in the gym because you don't have fights. So I'm burning through muscle, I'm burning through necessary fluid, you know. Also, I'm taking abuse to the head and to the body and to the arms, where I'm depleting fluid out of my body. That's a recipe for going to the upper room. That's a recipe to going to the upper room. You want to make apple cinnamon? Hey, guess what? Take some apple, cut it up, put a little bit of butter in the on the skillet, put some cinnamon in there, maybe a little bit of water. Hey, you got, and don't take that many ingredients just to make a little bit of apple cinnamon, little whatever you call it, a little parfait, or a little fruit toppings. It don't take that much. And just like that, it don't take that much to get injured. All them concussions, or you see them motherfuckers get clipped with them punches and it look like they about to die. A lot of them injuries started in the gym. They started at these dudes fighting in weight classes they shouldn't have fought to begin with. That's why you see one guy look like he got a granite chin one day, like Regis Prograis, and all of a sudden he can't take a punch. When that motherfucker started talking about, well, I'm doing dry fast now, I'm doing 48 or 24-hour dry fat. And that means you don't take fluid. You don't take absolutely nothing. Stop. That's a problem. That's his body telling him he needs to move up in weight. But they ignore the signs. And you ignoring signs like that is like ignoring if you got a rash growing up your ass. So, like I continue to say, when you overstay your welcome in boxing, you pay. And then when you move up a weight class, right? You move up, you don't stay long. Like Devin Haney did at 135. You don't stay long. When he went to 40, he had a cup of coffee, not even a full cup of coffee at 135 pounds. He didn't even have a full cup of coffee there. This nigga had a Starbucks medium. But all you do is burn important nutrition and you take years off your life. And even if you at a weight class that you shouldn't be at, guess what, nigga? You should be at least 10 to 15 pounds off that weight for a camp. So naturally, as you doing boxing things for camp, you know, as you sparring and you doing the natural things that boxers do, the weight just falling off. You coming in 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, of course. Of course. You fighting once every 18 months. You think these niggas stand in the gym and they eating the necessary diets that they need to eat between fights to be fighting once a year or every 18 months, year and a half? No. These motherfuckers would rather die in the ring trying to make a weight than moving up. And Regis gonna end up dying, killing himself in that ring. I'm telling you. And I say it from a place of all do, I don't give a fuck. Like, if he do, he do. I wouldn't shed a tear. Like, literally, I wouldn't shed one tear. Give them the little bell count they give them niggas, and boxing can roll on. But I'm saying this as a cautionary tale. His lack of confidence, he might be a better fighter. I guarantee you, when JoJo Diaz started hurting you, that should speak volumes. That should speak volumes. The way they said JoJo was hurting him, that should speak volumes. So at that point, it's time to move up. When you start cutting and you start to notice a lot of these fighters have skinny legs, a lot of them niggas is cutting into their legs. Your legs is your stability. Your legs is where your power comes from. Your legs is how your shock absorbers, how you take a punch. These niggas be dying to make a particular way. Move your ass up. Because all you doing is taking years off your life and years off your career. And that's a fact. So, that's all you doing. And a lot of times, you're going to feel a lot better, a lot stronger. But a lot of these guys, they want to squeeze down to weights. They want to squeeze down the weights to have a size advantage. Only when you're young, you can have that advantage. When you get older, it becomes a disadvantage. Because your body can't keep taking the abuse. You can't keep abusing the body. Shaving off 30 pounds, or you supposed to be fighting at 54 and you squeezing down to 40. You know, no. It's the weight cut that's really when you see these highlight reel knockouts, I guarantee you a lot of that be the weight cut. And let me say something else. It was a particular lady on Instagram. She's a physician or something. She said something very, very profound in my opinion. When Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, she said something very profound. She said that the reason that you see a lot of these athletes get injured today, and they have all these injuries and these tears and these hamstrings, she said because they're dehydrated. Now, it's always the talk about sugar, right? Processed sugar is a more terrorizing drug. It's one of them top drugs ever. It's more detrimental than cocaine, right? Um, but the other white is salt. So if you think about it, you have Mikal Bridges, right? He plays for the New York Knicks. I remember before he got traded to the Knicks, he said he would eat at Chipotle every day, right? And you know why I bring this point up about eating Chipotle, eating out. My mom used to work in the restaurant industry for some time when she stopped being an educator. And she would tell me how much salt that they would put on their food. He said when you go to those places like Chipotle, and you go to these places like, these restaurants, your regular soul food place or your regular, chicken spot, they douse that shit in sodium. When you go buy stuff that's pre-packaged and freezed, it's already preserved in a high amount of sodium. See, what sodium does, it does help retention of water. That's what it's for. That's why Gatorade is filled with sodium. You shouldn't drink Gatorade. You shouldn't drink Gatorade, and drink it like it's water or drink it like it's apple juice or some type of recreational drink. You shouldn't be drinking pop at all. Stop. Unless it's like Olipop. Stop. Unless it's like Olipop or some shit like that. So yeah, you shouldn't be drinking pop at all. But that's another question for another day. Even that no sugar pop, no, you shouldn't be drinking that. But as I'm picking up dog shit, but to carry on, come on. The thing about sodium is, it can drive obviously blood pressure up, but also, it can also like get to the point where you're retaining too much fluid too, but not in a fucking good way. That's why when you see people with high blood pressure, their ankles swell up and shit starts swelling. So that sodium is a killer too, but you need it because without sodium, you can't retain fluid. So you can't completely cut sodium out, but it's a double-edged sword. But also, it's just a lot of these guys don't stay hydrated enough. And that's where a lot of the injuries come from. So if we talking about extreme weight cuts or hold on, please, hold on, bro. Oh my God, I'm so tired of walking this nigga. Go. If you talking about extreme weight cuts, and you doing all this weight cut and you sweating all this water out your body, guess what? You're dehydrating yourself, especially if you're going into burning into muscle and shit. So gotta be careful with that too. Y'all just sipping on them Gatorades. If you ain't doing nothing like hooping at LA Fitness or you ain't doing no strenuous work, you shouldn't be drinking Gatorade. 0 no 0. Or you got constipation or diarrhea, excuse me. Gatorade is not to be drunk like water. Don't forget it. Gatorade is not to be drunk like water. That can put you into hypertension mode. Oh, I'm so tired of this dog today. The last couple of days. Hold on. I'll be trying to be nice. Hold on. Go. But, but like I said before, a lot of these dudes, they'd rather die than move up and live a healthier lifestyle. Move up. Don't wait and let politics kill you in boxing. Move up and wait. Where you can take a punch, where you can function, where you can actually eat meals and feel fuller. A lot of these dudes don't want to do that. But nonetheless, let's move on to the bud portion, right? I'm trying to keep my composure with this dog. Stop, man. Everybody else take their dog out for 2 minutes and go back inside. He walk over 2 miles a day. I'll get my next dog. That nigga live. He's sitting in the backyard. Like black folks do they dog. Put that nigga in the backyard. But yeah, let's talk about bud. So a lot of people saying, "Oh, Bud is shredded, he ripped, he must be on steroids," right? And you could just tell a lot of people. Something bit me on my arm. You can tell a lot of people don't know nothing about fitness. Y'all really be thinking, hey, I feel like enough of y'all watch enough boxing. Enough of y'all watch enough boxing to know this. Just because a guy is ripped up, or got delts, or got buys, or got big calves, it doesn't mean that he's strong. You know what I'm saying? Like people saying, well, Bud is already on steroids. It's like just looking at a car because it looks fast. I'ma just assume that it is fast. It don't work that way. You know? So my whole thing about it is this. If y'all just going on how you look, that don't mean nothing. Tim Bradley was ripped up and couldn't crack an egg at brunch. Jeff Lacey had these big, strong, arms and muscles, and he couldn't touch Joe Kawasaki. He couldn't touch Joe Kawasaki. He couldn't touch Joe Kawasaki. So, let's see. We get to the fight and see how he do it. I always remember Flame on 24 bringing up the fact when Munguia was fighting Derevchenko, like his stamina was off the chain. Nobody brought that up. Like his stamina was off the chain. Can we get to the fight and see how Bud body performs in the fight? That's it. Just because I've seen guys that look ripped up, six pack, chest, and they weak in the gym. And they're weak. They're flat out weak. So physique doesn't mean you're strong. Having abs don't mean your abs are strong. Your stomach is a great indicator of your heart health and your body fat. So if you got a stomach, a big stomach, where you gotta lift your shit up to reach your shit, if you catch my drift, that's an indicator that you have a body fat, you have too much body fat, and also it's an indicator that your heart health is poor. And that's why you see a lot of bodybuilders today, what they call it with like the gut, the bubble gut or whatever. Old bodybuilders, they didn't used to have that. So the stomach is a great indicator. I know when my stomach started to poke out, okay, I need to start eating a little bit better. The stomach is the ultimate indicator of heart health, and it's the ultimate indicator of if your body fat is out of control. That's what it is. But a lot of people just think because you got abs, oh, you should be able to take a punch. A lot of times, a little bit of water and fat around the abs protect it from damage. A lot of times when you got those abs there, and it's just right there, the muscle is right there. So you can see he could be ripped up and he can't take a body shot. And people be like, why? He don't have the water or the fat to protect the abdomens. The abdomens are right there. He stripped it of the fat and he stripped it of the water. So also having abs is not another great indicator that how strong your core is. It's, I don't know why people call me, but it's not a great indicator whether you can take a punch or not. You can take a punch down there or not. So just because y'all see Bud, he ripped up or he looks stronger, that don't mean that he's gonna perform at this high level. Now the great questions are, is he gonna be slow when he moves up? That's a great question. Is the speed gonna be there? You know what I'm saying? Is the stamina gonna be there? These are all great questions to have, but just jumping to conclusion. Oh, he looks so ripped up, and how did he rip up like this, and how did he do? I mean, let's just look at it. He took a whole year to this fight to build his body up. Well, apparently John Jones did the same thing when he moved up to heavyweight. He took a whole year systematically moving up in weight, taking his time, not throwing the weight on in 6 months or 90 days, or just moving up in weight and just saying I threw the weight on. You know what I'm saying? Like, he took time. So Crawford did the same thing that John Jones did. He took the year, built up his body. You know what I'm saying? And now, he got used to walking around with the weight. He got used to carrying the weight. He got used to probably just, punching and doing some gym work with the weight. He gained the weight. I think people forgot when he became undisputed champion at 140, he tipped the scales at 180 pounds. Go look at some of them pictures. Go look at some of them pictures after he became undisputed at 140 pounds. Mikey Garcia, for the love of me, was at 177 pounds at one point. So him getting up to 185, and then you got to remember, the black genetic is different than any other type of genetic. So it wasn't like Charlo, where Charlo was coming off a hand injury, right? Jamel was coming off a hand injury versus Canelo, and he just, cat off the couch and just put on, he just put on, 14 pounds. He just put the weight on. You can tell he just put the weight on. They didn't try to systematically move up. He just rushed and did this shit to get a check. Bud took an entire year. To put the weight on, walk around with the weight on, prepare his body, lift the weights, eat the things he probably wanted to eat. And now, one thing that you see he doing is that I haven't seen too much in the past, because I've seen him wear ankle weights and stuff. He started to put the weight vest on. Now you might ask, what does the weight vest do? Hang around and I'll explain it in a minute. All right? I'm explaining why he's using the weight vest. Why I'm just assume why he's using the weight vest, right? So at the end of the day, they're not giving him an opportunity to prove his performance. All that look good, but how's your conditioning gonna be in the fight? How's your speed gonna be in the fight? How are you gonna take the bumping and the physicality of Canelo, him, pushing you around or him hitting you on your arms? Just because you look bulkier don't mean you're gonna be efficient, is what I'm trying to say. Just because you look cut up don't mean you're gonna be efficient. It doesn't mean so. People acting like, well, Crawford just fought in, let's say, April, and all of a sudden he looking like a beast. He literally took a year off to build his body. He literally took the year off. He literally has a strength and conditioning coach. He literally has a team like Victor Conti, who's probably testing his blood and seeing how much protein and how much potassium and how much vitamins and what he needs to do that's best to move up. So they giving him the best nutritional plan. They giving him the best supplemental plan. And I'm pretty sure the strength and conditioning coach in Victor Conti is touching bases on what's the best strength plan for him to do this. So that's why he took the year off. That's what they're not telling. He took a year off to build his body. John Jones did as well too. He took a year off to build his body before he made his heavyweight debut. That way you can walk around with the weight. You ran with the weight. So you kind of used to it. So you got a year walking around about 185, 190, 200 or whatever, he gonna choose to come in at, right? So yes, that's why you do that. Most guys, 6 months later, they take the weight 6 months later, and they come back like, no, it don't work that way. It takes time for your body to acclimate and work. For some weight classes, stop. In some weight classes, it might be 7 pounds, it might be 3 pounds, it might be 4 pounds, but in regular human math, right? In regular human math, it don't sound like a lot. A 7-pound weight jump don't sound like a lot. A 14-pound weight jump don't sound like a lot. But in boxing terms, it's a lot of weight because, yes, Canelo comes in at 168. He may rehydrate up to, I'm guesstimating, 190. And Bud might come in at 170. Now, what seems to be a 14-pound weight advantage is now a 20-pound weight advantage. And not only is it a 20-pound weight advantage, it's a 20-pound acclimated weight advantage to one that is not acclimated to the weight. Canelo, even if he struggles to make the weight a little bit, you know, even if he struggles to make the weight, you know, he's used to being at the weight class. He know how his speed gonna be. He know how his power gonna be. He know how his cut gonna be. And they may do little things, you know, in this camp, maybe come in a little bit lighter or work a little bit more on speed. But for the most part, they've been here before. Crawford is trying to simulate this with a year, what it's gonna be like, you know. So it's more than 14 pounds. It's more than a 20 pound. Because when you look at it, people that's picking Canelo is just going with the logical pick. It's a guy that knows his speed, knows his power, knows his punch resistance, know how to make the weight, know how to improve how to make the weight. For Crawford, yes, he may be 185. He may not be 185. But it's just a simulation. This is just our calculation. And unfortunately, you know, yes, you get test runs in the gym. Yes. But you only get one night to perform. You got to remember that. You only get one night to perform. So when they come up with this algorithm, this formula, like if it don't hit, if the formula is off, like the mission is blown. If it's off a little bit, Crawford got to be perfect. If he off and Canelo off, you know, it's probably still a good chance that Canelo gonna win that fight. It's probably still a good chance that Canelo gonna win that fight. And I'm just keeping it real. But as far as the weight vest, I don't think he's necessarily using the weight vest to cut weight, because it's also a great way to increase the intensity of your workout. So the weight vest is a great way to increase the intensity of the workout, right? You add 20 pounds to your cardio, you know, you add 20 pounds to your, you know, walking around the gym. The heavier you are, that's why when you get on the elliptical or you get on the treadmill, it asks for your weight. The heavier you are, the more calories you burn, right? So it increases that intensity. For people that struggle with intensity in their workout, it makes the workout more intense. And it's a lot of people, from me just eyeballing around the gym, there's a lot of people who struggle with intensity. A lot of people, they work out, they do a set, they sit there for 3 or 4 minutes, right? And they wait to fully recover, and then they work out, and then once they fully feel, recovered, then they work out. That don't do shit. All that shit do is increase your chance of getting injured by getting so cold. That's all it do. That's all it do. You know, how quick you go from the next set, or if you set into the next workout, the next set to the next one, is really your intensity of your workout. That's your intensity. And with the weight vest, for people who struggle with that intensity, it makes your workout just that much more intense. For people who got great intensity, it makes your workout just that much more intense. But for him, he's using it, I believe, to simulate the championship rounds. So when you get fatigue in your arms, usually when you get fatigue, two things start happening. You feel it in the legs, or when you out of shape, you feel it in your chest first. So when you out of shape, you might, when you run or do something They get your heart rate up. You tend to feel it in your chest. When you get fatigued, and you condition, the first thing that usually starts to happen is your legs start to cramp, your legs start to get heavy. You start to use your legs start to go. That's the first thing that happens when the conditioning start to go. Your legs. A lot of times when you're conditioned, you get that second wind, and you able to work through that lactic buildup in your legs. But that's one of the first things you start to see go when you get tired and you somewhat of a conditioned athlete, your legs. So once again, that can continue to be a problem for a guy that most people say he needs to lose his legs. So you put that weight vest on, which I'm not sure how much weight it is. I believe maybe 20 pounds. You put that weight vest on, so when you get to around 9, 10, 11, 12, you're already used to having heavier weight on you. I'm pretty sure they doing some type of sprinting with that on. And he's breaking through his fatigue. Come on, bro. We done stopped 1,000 times. And that's really going to push him through his fatigue. So that weight vest is really for the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th round, so he still can operate and lose those legs. So you see him walking this down the steps. You see him walking up the steps. You probably also see him obviously running the miles. You probably seeing him running the sprints with it on. He's shadow boxing with it on. Therefore, also it's going to help him maintain some speed. I remember Zab used to train with ankle weights on his wrist to keep his hand speed up. So also, it's also going to not only keep him in the game in the championship rounds when most start to fail and Canelo start to fade, it's going to keep him in the championship round, but also it's going to keep that speed where it needs to be at. So it's all science. They all calculated the formula, whether it was Conti, his strength and condition coach, Womack, Bud. They tested him for everything, see what he need, and it's really going to be about, can he handle the punch? There's nothing you can do about the punch. You can work the neck. You can mentally prepare him to take the punch. But ultimately, that just comes down to him, genetics, and where his mind is at. Then, it really comes down to, can he take the physicality? Can he take the hitting on the arms and what they going through on the clinch and all of that? So it's taking the abuse and have the ability to clock on. The weight vest is for the speed and for the championship rounds. That's what it's for. It's for the legs and the speed. So if he can keep his legs in the game, for 12 rounds, and still have that conditioning, that's the key. But it's just to stimulate abuse. That's all it is. So when I take this abuse, hey, speed gonna still be there and my legs still gonna be there. And that's why the first 6 rounds is critical. If Bud can jump out to a lead in the first 6 rounds and steal those 6 rounds, then Canelo got to exert energy 7, 8, and 9, and 10. Now, Canelo come out, set the tone, and if Canelo can win 3 of the first 6 rounds, then Bud might be in trouble. If he can win 3 of the first 6 or drop Bud a couple times, it's probably over with. Because he already up 2 or 3 rounds. So it's probably pretty much over with. But if Bud can steal those early rounds and make Canelo exert the energy in 9, 10, 11, 12, that's what it is. So, but the weight vest, It's a great way to kick the intensity up, but for him, it's a great way to stimulate fatigue and prepare for fatigue, carrying that extra weight on fight night, carrying the speed. So when that vest come off, the speed. When that vest come off, the legs. So yeah, so I'm pretty sure they sprinting with it on. They walking up stairs, downstairs. He shadow boxing with it on. You know, he probably, shitting with it on. He doing all types. The only thing he probably not doing with it on is sparring. That's it. So, but yeah, the vest is a great way to keep his legs in the game. And it's a great way to, with this weight gain, to maintain the speed. At what point do they take it off is a great question. I will say probably the week of the fight. Also, for fighters, it's a great way to cut weight. Like I said, you're putting the additional weight on the body. You putting the additional weight on the body. It's going to automatically burn more calories, whether it's 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30, 50 pounds. You're burning more calories. So, like I said before, for him, the game is win the early rounds, make Canelo have to exert energy in the later rounds. If Canelo win the early rounds, it's probably over with, because then he can coast on the back half. So, his best bet, whatever it may be, if it's coming out there in boxing, is to win. It's the score. It's the score. Mayweather gave the blueprint is hit and don't get hit. That's what it is. It's hit and don't get hit, whether it's feints, whether it's combinations, whether it's pop shotting, whether it's mixing it all in, whether it's you putting your twist with body work in there, that's on him. No, I'm starting to cry fast. Hold on. Come on. Boy. But that's pretty much all I had to say. Yes. Do something nice for this dude. Man, that's the thanks I get. That's all I had to say. I'm going to do a short line, man. I'm about to get ready for my Wednesdays.